Call the meeting to order. We'll start with an invocation.
Let's pray. Father God in heaven, we just thank you for the weather. God bless you. We appreciate the cold. I pray that you be with these people tonight, and I pray that you be with these men and women who make decisions for our city and for the folks here in Concordia. I pray that you bless them. I pray that you lead them with the spirit that only you can provide, God. I pray this in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag
United States of America and to the republic which stands under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
We will start with approval of the agenda. Are there any changes? Okay. Our motion?
So moved.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Lamberts, a second by Commissioner Hash to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those-
aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to public comments. This is a time where citizens are encouraged to speak publicly. We request that you state your name and address, speak respectfully, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone here for public comments? Moving on to proclamations, recognitions, presentations. We have a public hearing on the Airport Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Goal. The public hearing is now open. Are there any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Commissioners. We have Brad Waller, our airport planner here, and he'll say a few words just to kind of share with the public why we're having this public hearing and what the DBE goal is.
Yeah, just for Brad Waller, Alpha Management Company. Basically, just briefly, every 3 years, we update the program for any projects that include FAA grant funding, which is pretty much every project we do at the airport. So this is just the next round of it for the next 3 years worth of projects. Basically, a disadvantaged business enterprise is one owned by a minority or women-owned or veteran American, things like that. So basically, we calculate it by taking the total number of DBE certified businesses by KDOT. They keep a record of it. You have to apply it. I'm not part of that, so I don't know exactly the process, but they keep track of what's certified as. And then we divide that number by the total of the businesses that can do the work within a 100-mile radius in all those counties, and get a number. The number this year is going to be 4.73%. Based on historical averages. That was what was calculated by the number. Based upon what we've done the last, I'll say 6 years, but the last 2 programs, they were both about 4.24 and 5.13. So we're going to look at 3.85% as the goal. That's how it's calculated. We've ran it through with FAA, the DBE program through the website. They're fine with it. It all passes. We just need to have a public hearing just to make sure that you can provide any thoughts or comments on it, or anybody in the public might, if they so choose. Any questions on how it was derived or done?
Are there any more comments?
Ashley, I had a couple of questions on in the actual document itself. There were some cities listed that I think maybe needed to be changed to Concordia. I put them in my notes on my phone. It won't pull them up. So I will call Stacy in the morning and give her those. I can't tell you exactly what page that they were on right now. So anyway. Other than that,
This is kind of a template that we use for a lot of different cities.
yeah.
We have just a few. So thank you, Marcia.
Not any further public comments, then this public hearing is now closed. To the Broadway Plaza annual update. We have Nikki here.
Thank you for having me. This put together just for you to look at and kind of follow along as I present. Shall we go for Marcia? Will she pick this up? I didn't get to spend much time with Bob, but I can tell you in the few months that I did, I would say to Bob, how long do I get to say I'm new at this position? And he laughed and said, well, Kim still says it. So he made me feel better about that. Awesome, you bet. So when I did a rundown of last year's events, I started February 1st, so I've been there for a year now. We had 132 total events from January through December. We had 3,759 in total attendance. That is probably really higher than what I have here. I don't go and count every time we turn on the Chiefs games, or every time we turn on the Royals games, or every time they're at the splash pad. So I know there was a lot more traffic than this number shows, but I do know that September alone, we had 2,100 on the property in just that month. And I know we had some damage to the grass, and I had Nick Jackson come out and he said probably a lot of it was the traffic of September. So that was a good thing to hear. We had a great 5th anniversary. We called it the birthday party of the Broadway Plaza in September to celebrate the 5th year. We had a stunt that was there performing 3 performances for us that day, which turned out to be a great day. Our events that drew crowds of 200 plus, our Mother's Day vendor fair, which we're planning again, the CES, the elementary schools reward party, Celebrate Freedom Church service, the art walk, the high school homecoming presentation, our stunt comedian Wacky Chad, and the all-class reunion featuring Vandalin Cross in September for the Fall Fest. We did have a few issues that we were dealing with. The first thing that I got to deal with in February of last year was our polar vortex and the restrooms, as far as there's no insulation and being concerned about the water and the pipes, but we made it through that season and everything came out great. Then our alley work, which that's out of our hands, but we had to shut the splash pad down in the middle of July, which we got through it. Everybody made it through. We have dealt with some disrespect of the restrooms, but I know that's not anything new when we're dealing with public restrooms. There were some grubs on the lawn also in that little area that Nick addressed, but it didn't charge us anything because he says we've already taken care of and had the contract for the grubs. So hopefully the grass will look good again here in the spring. A few minor technical issues, but we have a great group that we work with at Daktronics. They're always so quick to answer my calls. They're very quick to help me troubleshoot. They're very quick to help me when there's a problem arising. So I'm thankful for that. We're working on getting a groundskeeper. We've tried, one way was to have Richard and Paul reach out to people that they thought might be interested in picking up some hours. And nobody came down to talk to us that they thought would be interested. So we do have, we're in, it's out in the public for people to apply. If you know anyone that wants to pick up a few hours at the Broadway Plaza, Paul really carried the load for us this year. I think Paul probably mowed every single time this year. Richard's just very busy with the police department and he serves our country as well. And he's gone till March right now as well. The windstorm knocked down our tree. I don't know if anybody got to see that or not. It caused some damage to our tree, but I do not know who helped set the tree back up. I sent a text to Richard and Paul to thank them, and they said it wasn't us. So there's great community members that somebody stepped in and put our tree back up after the windstorm had finished moving. I'm thankful for grants. I have a Broadway Plaza committee that I meet with, and I know it was someone on my Broadway Plaza committee that spoke about our technology and wanting to put some upgrades in since we are 5 years into the Broadway Plaza. And I was very pleasantly surprised to receive a grant for $2,500 from the Charles and Isabel Blosser Foundation to help with upgrading of our tech room. So that was exciting to receive. Thankful for my groundkeepers, Paul and Richard. I'm thankful for the Broadway Plaza Committee that meets with me to listen to ideas, give me direction. Thankful for our unknown community members that pick up trash, straighten tables and chairs. I drove by and seen, I don't know who the man is, but he will be straightening up chairs and tables. Just great people that are taking care of the plaza. And I'm thankful for the encouragement from the community. I've had a lot of good feedback this year. I had a lot of great groundwork already laid down by Jessica. So I'm thankful for the work that she's done. I'm excited for the next year. I'm starting to plan that right now and have been. The committee, we've talked about different ways to change it up a little bit, kind of keep it the same, but find a new way to change it up and spice it up. So we're kind of looking at Broadway Plaza Week through the summer to really draw attention. So any questions for me? Any thoughts, concerns? I'm still learning. Oh, and this, one more thing, sorry. I don't know if you guys got to see this magazine, but there's a great article on the Broadway Plaza in the Northwest Kansas Today magazine. It was a great write-up and had an article about what we do down there. So I don't know if you guys got to see that or not. Chuck, did you ever get a hard copy? Yeah, great. So that's really all I have, unless you guys have any questions for me.
This was great, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Very nice
Thank you.
to just have it all right, real simple and lined up for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Questions or comments?
I think it's impressive to me, one, that it's been 5 years already. But that how much concern there was in getting this started, that it was going to be a drain, it wasn't going to work, and waste of time and money. And I think how impressive it's been, how active it's been, and how many communities have come and check it out and look at how they can incorporate it in their communities. So it's nice to see it continue to do. Appreciate your work.
And thank you. And I know that quite a few of you sitting around this table have had calls or emails about the Broadway Plaza. How did you start it? What was the beginning process? And I know I would send them on to Amy or to Chuck, Ashley. A lot of you know the groundwork that I didn't know that it took to get there. A lot of community. Thank you.
Cancel. Alexa, cancel.
Mute.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our action agenda.
Alexa,
The minutes of the January 19th, 2022 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of January 19th, 2022.
Second,
Been moved by Commissioner Belvin, seconded by Commissioner Wentz to approve the minutes of the January 19th, 2022 meeting. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. All those
Aye.
opposed- All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to appropriation ordinance number 2.
I move to approve appropriation ordinance number 2.
Second.
Second.
The motion by Commissioner Belden, second by Commissioner Lamberts to approve appropriation ordinance number 2. Any further discussion? If not, all those opposed say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Oh,
Aye.
Aye.
against it, I'm sorry.
I got ahead of myself. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the consulting service agreement for the box hangar.
Mayor and Commissioners, our new runway has done what it's supposed to do, which is attracting more frequent flies and larger planes. And we now have demand for a hangar, which is on the capital improvement list for the airport and specific mentioned in the 2013 update to the airport master plan. So, and we got this on the ACIP project. It is eligible for entitlement funding. And so we are asking for approval of this tonight to enter into the design agreement with Benish so they can work toward design. We want to split this across 2 fiscal years worth of ACIP funding. So what we're asking you to approve is the consulting services agreement with Benish for the design of the hangar. This will be 1 fiscal year worth of funding from the FAA. So they would put up to $150,000 toward it. The city's responsibility would be 10% of that, or any overages over $150,000. Then next year, we intend to come back to you to ask for the construction side of that authorization. And at that point in time, we will have another $600,000 available to us through entitlement funding, plus the potential for additional money coming through some American Rescue Plan funds, or was it the infrastructure bill? Through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there may be additional funding available to help out with construction toward that. So, and again, 10% match possibly on that. So for very little investment through the city's part, we can get a hangar built that would accommodate the size of the B-2 aircraft that we built the runway for. So again, we're meeting our goals with this. So again, tonight we'd ask that you would authorize us to enter into the consulting services agreement with Benish for this box hangar design, and then we'll come back to you again next year for the construction portion of it. And again, Brad's here if you have any questions related to this contract.
I move to authorize the city manager to sign the consulting services agreement with Benish for the box hangar project at Gloucester Municipal Airport for $140,480 plus time and material fee not to exceed $29,385. To be paid from city CIP funds with 90% reimbursement from FAA ACIP program expected.
Second.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Lamberts, a second by Commissioner Hash. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the contract for removal of asbestos containing material on 326 and 330 West 6th.
Mayor and Commissioners, we kind of know the history on these 2 properties and these 2 houses. We did have the asbestos inspection done, and it resulted in, we did find asbestos there. So the thermal insulation around the boilers in both houses, along with the transite siding on the greenhouse and some window glazing. It listed 29 windows, so I'm going to assume that means for both houses. All of those have asbestos, and therefore it needs to be disposed of in a manner separate from the rest of the construction debris, I guess, is what we're going to call it when the houses are knocked down. And so ISI Environmental that performed the inspection also can do removal. And so we are asking for your authorization to proceed with that. I think the total amount was around $8,000. So it's over my spending limits. We do need your authorization to proceed. That work can be done almost immediately as soon as they can get it on their schedule. And then as soon as that's done, then we can go ahead and tear down the rest of the houses. In the meantime, Campbell & Johnson is working on developing specifications for the demolition of both houses so that the contractor has some direction and that they're aware that the asbestos has been removed.
Are we still thinking March?
For demolition, we'd still like to get it done. Yeah, and sometime in March, definitely have it cleared before the Brown Grand has an event planned May 26th, so we want to make sure that everything is clear for there. And then we'd still like to have the parking lot constructed by Fall Fest. Those are still our goals.
I move to authorize the city manager to sign the contract with ISI Industrial Services to remove asbestos material in the structures at 326 and 330 West Sixth to be paid with TIF funds.
Second.
And a motion by Commissioner Hash, a second by Commissioner Lamberts. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So we're moving on to manager report.
Multiple things to report. Did have a little bit of snow today. Talked with Jim. We did have a few mechanical issues with our salt trucks, and so the salting of streets was a little bit delayed from what they planned on. They do try to get the salt out, especially on 11th Street before 7 a.m. before school traffic starts. However, today they weren't able to get that done, and so it was a little bit later when they got it done. The trucks are back up and going again, but we did have some issues there. You might have also noticed that the traffic light at 15th and Lincoln has been on again, off again, on again, off again. It doesn't seem to like the cold weather very well. So once that temperature drops down below about 20 degrees, it throws a fault and it starts blinking again. So Jim's working on trying to get that corrected. We replaced some parts. He's working with the vendor to try to get that corrected. And Ron Koppel's been great. He's been coming out and trying to help us troubleshoot as well. So we do appreciate that. We did attend Local Government Day in Topeka on January 26th. And thank you, Ashley, for joining me for that. We're able to connect with our local legislators on a few different items, able to attend the Transportation Committee hearing as well, and got to visit with Secretary Lorenz and some of our staffers. We also found out that we did not receive funding for the electrical vehicle charging grant through the Volkswagen settlement. So we're able to visit with some of our staff and kind of find out why. And the reason for that was because they wanted to complete the I-70 corridor with electrical vehicle charging stations every 50 to 70 miles. So they were focusing on funding those areas first. They did think that we had a strong application, and so I had been in contact with Francis Energy, and they do also think that we have a good location and a good proposal, so they're going to continue to apply for funding. We did find out from Secretary Lorenz that through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, KDOT has been awarded $8 million a year for the next 5 years to work toward electrification of fleet vehicles and electrical vehicle charging stations. So we believe that we can apply for those monies for our vehicle charging station with Francis Energy. So we think that we'll go ahead and apply for that again, and hopefully we can be funded. So I guess the final thought on Local Government Day is that people are noticing the good work that's being done in Concordia. It was amazing to hear from our legislators, from the state staffers, as well as from other managers across the state, the good work that we're doing and how that's being pushed out there. So I just want to say good job. Thank you to everyone who is a part of that. It really takes a team effort to show good work. We are doing good work. So keep it up.
Thanks, Amy. Staff reports. I'm going to do my financial report now. Okay. It's not on there anywhere else. Separately, she sent it separately in an email. I hope you all got it.
I seen it today, so I didn't get to review it.
Okay.
And I know sometimes that's not possible to get it any sooner, but maybe.
Yeah, I didn't. That would have been great, but yeah, I wanted it to be on this meeting as opposed to next meeting. And
Yeah, no, I understand things happen, you can't get it, but maybe if we could get a text or something next time, so I could, because I seen it about 4 o'clock this afternoon. But I'm sure you'll.
yes, I'm going to try to explain things, and then there's no action on it, so you're welcome to review it as much as you want. Okay, the first page of the financials section of it, I'm just pointing out that on the right side, the cash balances are all positive. We ended the year positive everywhere, so that's good. The third page then of the financial, or no, fourth page, where it talks about the budgeted funds and revenues and expenditures. You can see again on the right side that we were under budget and expenses in every budgeted fund. So we didn't have any issues there. Then if you'll go to the general fund page, I'll just talk a little more in detail on a few things. I kind of laid it out in the memo, or in the written up part, but the sales tax, we know we collected 12.5% over budget, which was 137,500 more than last year. So both years we've seen a large increase, and I think that's kind of happening everywhere. We're just saying the state hadn't seen a big increase in total, so good to see that. It's 40% of our total general fund revenue, so that is good. Our franchise fees saw a 114% collection over budget. mostly due to timing of collections, but also there were increases in Maryland Electric and Kansas Gas. It's based on the receipts. We get 5% of their gross receipts and they send it to us every month. The rents, licenses, permits and fees, that one had 41,000 more than budget. The main reason for this was the 32,000 fee for the hospital. So that was a unusual thing for this year or for 2021. Another reason is that we did not have all of our youth and adult sports last year due to COVID restrictions. So we brought, in 2020, last year being 2021, we brought all those back in 2021. So we had more fees than the previous year. And then in total, you can see that we collected 90% of our budgeted revenue. That's kind of low, but that would, as explained in that first paragraph, was because there was budgeted an additional 1.4 million in FAA money. That was, we do this in August of the previous year, so that was just kind of guessing what would we have done in 2020, what would we have done in 2021. So it's just a matter of timing. But everything is still on track there. And if you remove that amount, then we collected 106% of our budgeted revenue. So that's where we would like to be. So on the expenses side, we spent 65% of our budget expenses. That removes the guaranteed reserve that we put in there. But again, if you take out that 1.4 million, because what I budgeted in revenue also was budgeted in expense, it's 100% paid for. So if you removed that, we ended $99,214 under budget. The main reason for that is the law enforcement department. If you can see it's broken down by each department, and that department saw the most under budget, and it was in the personnel line because we have been understaffed for the year. So thanks, I guess. But hopefully that will get better this year. And let's see. So at the end of the year, our reserve shows $462,880, which kind of stinks because that is not a real reflection of our reserve. We paid out $502,000 before the end of the year and submitted to be reimbursed, but we're not approved yet as of year end. So that needs to be added back to get $964,800 as our year end reserve. So that is $42,750 less than 2020. So very comparable year to year and what we were hoping for and expecting. As far as the other funds, the water fund is the only one that I'm really going to talk about. Everything else was on target and as expected. And the water fund, we also did well. We ended with a reserve of $1,070,000, which was an increase of $139,000 from the previous year. And basically, we didn't have any large projects in 2021 or major issues. We also didn't pay out the East Water Tower large payment as we had budgeted because they haven't started their paint job on that yet. So we're holding that until they start. Any questions on any of that? And the audit is March 21st and 22nd. And they'll want to talk to you, Ashley, at some point during that, but they'll also, when that's done, probably April or May, come back and present much more in-depth version of what I just did, and hopefully nothing will change. Any questions? And your just your groups, both of your I don't know, your listservs that you guys are on with municipalities, do they talk about, the sales tax? Is any of that attributed to inflation, or what are they? Is there any talk about it at all?
Early on, so in late 2020 and early 2021, they attributed it to pandemic closures, people staying home, and so more shopping local. Some of it's been attributed to the influx of federal COVID stimulus money. What we saw was a lot more people buying things they wouldn't normally have. So furniture, electronics, and cars. A lot of cars being sold, which was great for our car dealerships. Even though they were impacted by not being able to get maybe the new cars because of the chip shortage, a lot of used cars were being sold. So that was good. Then as 2021 wore on, we saw the impact of inflation. I really feel, and a lot of the other city managers feel, that because prices in general have increased, that also inherently increases the amount of sales tax that we're seeing, because all of a sudden then you were seeing the larger cities increase in their sales tax revenues too.
Does that impact how we would budget moving forward, and not knowing that the stimulus money is not coming out anymore? But anyway, that we keep setting expectations low, and then if it does well, then fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that this year was slightly above last year in our budget, but nothing much compared to what we actually got this year. I mean, yes, I'd want to stay under and be pleasantly surprised.
And Amber's done a great job. We've got a good 10 to 15 years worth of history on sales tax. I think it'd definitely be, and she does a great job budgeting conservatively on things too with the revenues. So it'd be really good to look at the past and consider these 2 years maybe as anomalies until we get further down the line.
Mhm.
Anything further for staff reports? Moving on to Mayor Commissioner comments. Marcia, you want to start?
I can do that. Thank you for the financial report. I appreciate all the work you do. I think that's it.
I have a few things, just, Hales Downtown takes care of our downtown services. Okay. I just noticed it the other day and they do a fantastic job. There's never any question.
I think they pick up 3 days a week, if I remember right, Monday, Wednesday, Friday usually.
Other than that, there's just a light out at 19th and Washington. It's been out for a few weeks.
Street light.
That's all.
I had just a quick question. What is, I had a couple people ask, what's going on in the alleys? What's being marked in the alleys?
Well,
Yeah. So, you know.
I can probably address that. There's lots of underground fiber optic going on with 3 different cable companies, and they're boring holes everywhere.
Okay,
And Saturday, I observed them unrolling a spool, and it was going fast. And then it was going underground. They're flying miles over underground right now. And you're seeing in some cases, they have to dig up curbs and replace them in cases where they turn in and stuff, so. But I mean, I'm not on top of it like Ron was, but he knows where everything's going on in each street in the alley, but yeah, there's a lot of that going on in different areas of town, and you see, occasionally you'll see 8 or 10 dig safes come in from one company where they're going through like up Broadway or up, you know, and doing several blocks at a time, so.
okay. And what kicked all that off? Is it just private sector investment?
Yeah, I think it talks with, I'm gonna say with Cunningham's anyway, I can speak for them. Brent's shared with us that they are really working hard to increase their investment to kind of build out their ultimate plan of fiber to the home. And so they worked with Bruno to get some additional hub buildings set up the last couple of years, and those are done. So if it's them that's working on it, they're working hard to get their network built up. If it's someone else, I'm not familiar with what they're doing.
And if it's fiber optic, then it would have to be private, right?
Very good. Okay, we will now move into executive session for confidential business data.
I would move that the city commission recess into executive session to discuss confidential business data or trade secrets of a business subsequent to KSA 754319D4 with Amy Lang, Justin Farrell, Tanner Johnson, and Tom Tuttle in attendance, and to reconvene in the city commission chamber 6:25 p.m.
We'll need about 3 minutes to set up because Marcia and Tom will be moving into us, and I'll need to get a separate Zoom meeting set up. So
I
we can
amend
have
my motion to be 6 until 6:30 p.m.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Lambert, a second by Commissioner Hash to go into executive session for confidential business data until 6:30 PM. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, say sign. Passes. Okay, no action was taken. We will be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. A motion by Commissioner Lambert, a second by Commissioner Hash to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry, we probably wait for Marcia, didn't I? No. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We will move into study session. We probably should wait for a couple minutes to get Marcia on.
Yes, and she's getting back in here too. She probably didn't even know what that. Oh, she knows that.
Study sessions over
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, Marcia's back on now. Justin's in the room.
We can go ahead and start.
We can go ahead and start. Okay, so study session for future airport development. Again, as I mentioned before, the runway's meeting its goals. We have more traffic coming in. We have more demand for hangar. We've had, I've been approached by a couple of businesses that have asked to develop at the airport. And as I looked through the airport master plan and we saw some of the land use maps that Brad had provided us, the existing land use map kind of outlines where we should have some commercial development, where there should be some industrial development. Then there's a future map in there that kind of reflects the as-built conditions of the runway or the ultimate built conditions of the runway. The master plan is adding on to the length of the runway yet, but we don't have approval from FAA to do that. We don't have enough flights. We don't have enough big planes. So we have to do some things to get there. So what I'd kind of like to know, some different questions, and I've got that on your memo. Basically, what kind of airport do we want to be? Do we care about locations of commercial or industrial businesses? And in my mind, that's kind of a clean and a dirty business. If there's a business that is going to generate waste, or that's going to be the people that are not in an office setting, as an example, in my like a manufacturing type setting, that could be considered an industrial or a dirty setting. An office setting where somebody would come in, I'm going to say in a suit and tie, they're doing a lot of computer type work. They're not doing actual manufacturing. That would be more of a clean setting or a commercial setting. And in my mind, that's how I'm separating them. Do we have much more development in that area beyond this hangar that we're proposing is going to require extension of utilities? So where would we want to focus our energies for utility extensions? We know that those are expensive, and we're not only talking about water and sewer, but we're also talking about gas, electricity, telephone, cable, internet. All of those utilities are necessary for any business at this point in time. Also, do we have a position on development of business that would directly compete with other businesses? And we talk a lot about being competition neutral. I know that's been Concordia's position for a long time. How do we feel about that at our airport, on airport property versus property that's just outside of that? Do we care? does our position with that, on that change with respect to generation of property tax, sales tax, or job creation? So we know that when we talk about the South development where Dollar Tree went and where the hospital is located, we had a pricing policy there in 2017 that made the price of that land go down based on the level of property tax, sales tax, and job creation generated. On airport proper land, it depends on what type of building and whether it is essential to airport operation or not, as to whether property tax is paid or not. Some businesses may generate sales tax, some may not. Some businesses may require people to physically be present, and some may not. Some may allow for remote work, others require people to live here in town. So do those things make a difference on how we feel about the businesses coming in? And then do we want to work toward attracting an on-site airplane mechanic or a maintenance personnel? As we increase based aircraft here, it can be handy for that. I know right now a lot of our pilots will go out of town to other airports that have airport mechanics, which is fine. Do we want to work at attracting a full-time or a part-time mechanic and what goes into that? And I know that Brad can kind of explain a little bit about what it would take to get one of those here. We did have a chance to visit with the Airport Advisory Board during their January 12th meeting, and you'll also see in your memo kind of their 4 recommendations related to future airport development. And the first and foremost is to ensure that we always have local match funding available to use with the FAA entitlement funds. There are an ongoing list of projects that they would like to see done at the airport, so we want to make sure that we can fully fund those. Recall that we get $150,000 a year from the FAA to go toward projects, and we can bank that up to $600,000. We also want to work toward a recruitment of an airplane mechanic, so it's important to our Airport Advisory Board, to the pilots on this board, that they have access to somebody who can fix their plane when they need it. And that makes sense from a business operation standpoint. Same is true for other city fleet vehicles. We want to make sure we have access to a mechanic that can fix problems so we can keep serving. Airport Advisory Board takes a neutral stance with respect to business competition, but they want to make sure that whatever development comes in does enhance our local economy. And also would hope that we would work toward advertising our airport more to bring in more flight operations, bring in more people and more planes to our great community. So that was the Airport Advisory Board's recommendations. So I guess it opened it up, study session style, informal conversation. What do we want our airport to be? What's our vision?
I guess I would ask Brad, I mean, could you kind of speak to, no speaking. Could you kind of speak to traditionally an airport of our size with that expanded runway, what type of businesses do you normally see pop up?
So the advantage we kind of have right now with your airport is through the process, we had 3 runways, 2 crossways, and we've eliminated 1, extended 1. And what we have is probably about 22 acres on the northeast side of the airport. So we basically have done the match, but we've designated what we need for airport use, aviation use, runway, taxiway, apron, that type of thing. So for the next 20 or 30 years, we've kind of identified that. We've got the primary runway and the crossway. So then what we have then is the old, quote unquote, I think the core section or whatever it is, the big square that was dedicated to the airport way back when the city or airport owns. So we don't need all that for the airport. There's about basically 22 acres on the northeast side of the property, 23.5 on the southeast side over on 150th Road. And there's about 27 acres on the southwest side of the property. They're nice to have, they're part of the airport. It's kind of like, something like KDOT right away. Once they have it, they really don't want to give it back because they may need it someday. But we've identified those areas primarily as areas that are non-aviation use. They're revenue generation now in the form of crops. But what can the highest and best use be? So in order for those to develop into anything really higher than that, we need to make sure they're on the master plan, which was what we're updating now. And I think that's a couple of the exhibits we put in there. Of what can they be, what's there. As far as what we're seeing on what I would say is that they don't have to be aviation related. They can be anything. There are opportunities for the airport or for the city to make the airport more revenue generation as opposed to drain, I should say. I mean, it could be any sort of a warehouse type district. It could be self-storage. It could be anything that really doesn't congregate people necessarily. The difference between something like that track there or something maybe just directly adjacent to it that's not on airport is we would have to go through FAA work. We can't sell the land. We'd have to lease it at fair market value and build through it. So there's some extra kind of hurdles through there, but they're not necessarily deal killers. And the whole point of that is to make sure the airport's not giving land away or giving economic generation opportunities away.
And then you're building, is it, are you're limited to 1 story?
Basically where we're at the 35-foot restriction line.
Okay.
So no, you could be higher than that. And the way we're going up, yes, they could potentially be higher than that, 2 or 3 stories. But I would say for our sake of discussion, probably 35 to 40 feet is about the height you go. So that's 2-story, I guess. I mean, depends on the land, and it's based on the land elevations, not the land elevations, but yeah. So I think kind of what we've talked about, at least as far as the airport board meeting, is the tracks that we've talked about, the northeast, southeast, and southwest are potentially available for anything. That could be a revenue generation to the airport, to the community, and increasing that. The one piece is on the southwest. As I'm sure you're all kind of aware, there's a hill on the west side of the airport, and you kind of got to go up to it and get on that plateau, for lack of a better term, to get to where the airport is. And in the middle there is where we're primarily going to focus on future hangars, apron, aviation use specifically. But if you go south on what I would call that plateau, kind of that hill line, we'd like to see that, if possible, develop into something that is directly used of the runway. Whether that's an office building where somebody comes in, however often, and can basically fly into the back and use it and have traffic come from the front. Like a hospital will bring in doctors, maybe it's a clinic or something there where doctors fly in from, I don't know, KC Med or cancer clinics or whatever, can fly right in, don't have to commute then, come into the backside, they're there one day a week, and maybe you rotate it through, stuff like that. So really the stuff adjacent to that taxiway and runway would be ideal to be something that utilizes the airport and has access to the airport. Other than that, it does not have to be aviation use.
Are there generally industries that you've noticed that do tend to gravitate towards this type of property?
I mean, aviation use, crop dusting is one that's usually there. I mean, Salina is a shining example of having a whole industrial park that is available to it. Now, granted, that comes with a larger city, an old Air Force base with a whole lot of land, all the infrastructure there and all that. So you kind of take what you can get.
Sure.
But it is a challenge, I would say, that a lot of small communities in Kansas face.
Okay.
Because if you go to a lot of other airports, there's not a lot of businesses that are located on airports. And it kind of coincides with how, airports need space. So for the most part, they've been put outside of town where there are minimal utilities. So I think the whole discussion here is just, it's there. We'd love to at least keep an option. It could turn into an industrial park, or we could subdivide it into lots for whether it's office complex, industrial, south, the south end there that's on the highway could be more of a commercial type. Home Depot, there's no reason something like that couldn't happen if the corporate world worked with the leasable.
I did talk a little bit with a few other airports and kind of asked through Casey and Lister, what do you do? And granted, these are all a little bit larger than us, but Newton, for example, on their aeronautics side, everything from aircraft manufacturing to maintenance. On the non-aeronautic side, research and development, printing, electric transformer repair and supply was one industry that they had. Looking at Miami County, their airport stuff was aircraft refinishing, mechanic, repair shops, that kind of thing. And their non-aeronautical was they had a restaurant inside the terminal, for example. Harrington doesn't have any aeronautic uses, but their non-aeronautic uses around the airport, US Stone, a gunpowder company, Tiffany Cattle Company for hauling and transport. So those are just some things. And then there's a huge list that I've got from a couple of Johnson County airports too, that are smaller, that they're classified as general aviation, but similar types of things. The potential for non-aeronautic uses is unlimited, everything from strength and training to manufacturing to distribution to office groups. So really unlimited.
I think in terms of the advisory board's recommendation, I really support those recommendations. I do want to be, I want to be competition neutral, but I want to be asset positive. And I guess what I mean by that is it's looking at the bigger picture, and that it's not solely isolated to competition neutral, but to make sure that it's adding something that's fairly tangible to our community. And so if there's not revenue, if there's no revenue generated for the city, then it doesn't necessarily make sense to have it there. You know, I had somebody ask me, well, you're working on, you say you're competition neutral, then why would you do this kind of deal here? Well, there's property tax generation, there's sales tax generation. And so in that sense, it makes sense to be competition neutral, but to give ground away to something that's not going to provide property tax either in residential or property, commercial property, or, you know, that doesn't make sense to me to do that. So competition neutral, but asset positive.
And I don't know how on airport would do property tax wise, or you know, how that shakes out, or if it's free or whatever, but when you do sign on, you do the lease agreements and lease the land and all that kind of stuff, a lot of that will go directly to the airport.
Well, and I guess
Supposedly that coffer, which then reduces the amount of that you have to subsidize from a community standpoint.
Sure. And when I'm considering property tax, I'm thinking about real estate taxes, residential real estate taxes. So if we believe that this business is going to employ 5 full-time employees, and there's some general idea that those 5 employees are going to live in town, they're going to be renting or owning property. And so we're either getting the property tax from the rental, we're getting property tax from the house. So if this business is wanting to locate, but they're not going to have anybody living in Concordia, then what's the real benefit to us? And if they can demonstrate a very clear, tangible benefit, then that's part of the conversation. But there's not, then there's no reason to give them preference over someone that might be contributing actively to the community. So recognizing it may not be specifically this property specific, but it adds residents, other forms of purchasing power elsewhere.
So Chuck, I understand what you're saying with respect to incentives, and I think that that's absolutely fair to look at those things. I'm going to turn to Brett and Justin. Is there any legal means for us to say, no, we don't want you at our airport? Can we actually tell somebody no if they're not asking for any incentives?
Absent any kind of zoning. Probably not. I mean, you know, there's gonna be some extreme cases that we probably could tend to, you know, dangerous things that would upset the values of the community type of thing, but in general, probably not.
Does that make a difference on if it's on airport property versus adjacent to airport property? So we own airport property.
Yeah. If it was airport property, I mean, we have a little bit more of a say because it's technically ours, I guess. That's tough to answer because it's going to be kind of, there's going to be a lot of moving parts with that, whatever the particular case is at that point in time. But, you know, say Home Depot wants to build south of there, I mean, that's going to upset the other hardware stores. We can't, there's a legal remedy to stop them. But, you know, say they're going to put it on our property, it's on the airport, there's going to be other hoops to jump through. You know, the FAA, the heights and all that kind of stuff too. So there's going to be some things there, you know. Top of my head.
I guess, so we aren't obligated to offer our property under really any circumstances.
No.
Because I'm thinking of like almost not at all apples to apples, but when we were talking about contractor for the alleyway, we had an unknown entity that hadn't really had a whole lot of experience in this project. But because they were the lowest and responsible bidder, or whatever that specific terminology was, we were obligated to go with them as opposed to saying we would prefer to go with this organization. But there were certain requirements that basically obligated us to go with this specific entity, but there aren't any of those that would exist where Chuck Lambert's Aviation is requesting to access this airport property. Well, we can't say no, but we have to say yes because they're checking these 4 boxes, and because they check these 4 boxes, then we have to.
I don't think so. You have to negotiate the deal.
Yeah, we have to have a development.
The one thing, what I was thinking when you were talking was, you have the city zoning that's out there, make sure you can't put a gas station residential, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The airport, I assume, is, I don't know, zone probably is airport. And I don't know if that had, I don't know what it is. I was looking around for a map. Maybe one thing you could do is look at what the zoning for airport is. If you're concerned about that, put what's in there. You could talk about potential for that, if that was a big concern. But I guess what I'm saying is the airport is kind of a open frontier because there probably isn't any zoning necessarily that says you can or can't do this.
Is that considered in the city limits?
Yes.
South of there, it's not though, right?
That's correct.
So then I doubt the county has any zoning, so still you can't control that.
I think specifically they don't.
Uh,
They don't, which is
Yeah.
part of the cell tower that went up.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the way that you would, if somebody came to us and said, yeah, I want a city of Concordia, I want to build, Justin's story trapeze testing facility. So we're not selling
And I think the big thing is hopefully economic development opportunities come up and then, some business comes to town and says, hey, I'm looking for 10 acres. And here's my requirements, that these are tools in your tool basket, the city tool basket to go, here's an opportunity, here's one, and here. That it's there, it's an opportunity, whether that progresses. or not. I think that's what we want to make sure is it's known that these are potentially available for something like that, so they can be used.
So a different way to phrase this then, and there's probably some bias, but the North Central Kansas Medical Center is under construction now. And so if a regional competitor wanted to come in and build a specialty clinic on airport property, knowing that, there could be some competition neutrality to that, but we don't necessarily want to do something to hinder or compromise our medical facility. I want to develop the land. If we have land and there's opportunity for development's good.
Mhm.
But I don't want it to necessarily be at the expense or at the cost, a negative cost to the community overall.
Right, so I think what I heard these guys say is you may not have legal means to say no, but you own the property, and so as such, you have control over what ultimately goes in there and what doesn't.
And those are kind of your legal means. But if they came in and said, we're gonna build a big giant clinic or something like that, we'd say, well, not here, because we're not.
Because I absolutely want to, my ultimate goal is to add value to the community. And so I don't want to subtract value from the community. Absolutely want to add value.
I guess what I'd say is, I think this is an asset to the community, is what we're bringing to the
Absolutely.
table. There's, what I say, 20, 60, 70 acres of land that the city owns,
Yes.
that is there, that could be developed on potentially, and you don't have to go find it, so. Now, I know there's challenges, utilities and all that type of stuff, there's challenges surrounding all of this, but we just want to make sure that it's known that they're there. And by putting them on this master plan as we've updated, it gives, once FAA approves the master plan, which we had some of this on there last time, so I'm not anticipating a whole lot of problems here, but once it's on there, then the FAA, once you go to them, that's one of the first things they're gonna say is you go, hey, we've got a self-storage facility that we want to put, that wants to go here for these 10 acres. They're gonna go, well, what's your master plan? So, well, it says this is available for this type of development. We'd like to go further, and that's gonna be your first check box.
So other than that, we would just kind of go through as we normally do with other properties and have people come present to you, look at a development agreement, see what makes sense. Do you guys have a preference on what makes the most sense to you as far as if we do have somebody that comes forward? where we want to focus our efforts and energy. So I guess.
I would feel like that's probably more of a question that we're gonna be directed towards our development person, because we can say whatever we want right now, but truth of the matter is somebody's gonna come to us and we're gonna consider everything.
Yep.
On a case by case, so I think that's more of a conversation with our Eco Devo.
Mhm. No, we're really trying to focus on the northwest corner, so no, we're not interested. Not what we're gonna.
Yeah.
And my agenda is not working out really great. What were my other questions on there? Let me see if we.
Yeah, mine disappeared.
Mine disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's just, it was a map like this.
Yeah.
Can't even get
You-
it.
What type of airport do we want to be? Do we care about locations of commercial businesses? How does extension of utilities impact our locations?
And maybe one of the things that I think Amy and I've kind of talked about is utilities aren't there. I mean, they're expensive to run. And whether you run them south along 81 to get to the south side, southwest corner, or however you would go to the east side of the airport, there's a significant cost either way. And is one more valuable than the other, or return on your investment? Probably until you get that opportunity of whatever it is and where they want to go, you're probably not going to answer that, but that's one of the big questions. Is where it's at. And maybe that's one of the things you maybe target is something on the east side that doesn't need. That's why the storage facility kind of keeps coming back to my mind. They don't need a lot of water, wastewater usage. They need electrical. There's just not gonna be a lot there. So maybe that's businesses like that may be more targeted to the east side where you don't have to put in a lot of infrastructure.
or to the west side, you mean by Airport Park?
Well, I was talking about the east side where you don't have to.
Oh, I see.
Along 100.
I mean, the other thing is, 81 highways is highly trafficked. We all know that. That's where your revenue generation is. So if you're gonna spend, let's just say $1 million on infrastructure, you're probably gonna want to go down there, because then you're opening up hopefully both sides and going further, as opposed to the county gravel road, or I was gravel, but yeah, gravel road on the east side. So things like that.
Do you have a general idea of what type of airport that you want to be in? I completely understand that there's a request coming in directed to Eco Devo, and they'll kind of push it some way. But if we have somebody that comes in and talks to our economic development person and says, I want to be at the airport, is there any kind of hard line in a type of business that we say absolutely not goes here, that definitely needs to be pushed toward, say, north development or east development area? Is there any kind of that guidance, or do we just want to stick with, we'll take a look at it on a case by case basis and kind of see what the needs are?
Yeah.
I think that gives me enough guidance to go forward with the requests that we have on hand right now and future requests. I think I'm comfortable with that.
Marcia, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a case by case basis. You have to look at what they want. And as far as the airport mechanic, I think that's an important position we need to look at.
I know of a pilot that doesn't live here, but because the airport is what it is, he keeps his plane here and he travels out of here, and so I think that there's an advantage to that. So I think being attractive to individuals who will be good stewards of our airport and our community, I'm interested in that.
Are there any minimum qualifications that we have to have even a part-time mechanic on site or an airport maintenance person?
The hangar facility is probably gonna be the first and foremost, where they can actually do their work. I feel like my understanding is the one that we have now adjacent to the terminal building isn't big enough. It isn't sprinkled, which I think, I mean, I have to look around, but I think it prohibits that type of work somewhat. So I think the biggest thing right now is we're missing a facility that would attract somebody. Then again, if you build it, they don't always come, so I can't. But from the airport board and our FAA grant perspective, I think we're gonna work on that hangar first. That it's not gonna, the plan is that will not be built as a opportunity for a maintenance hangar. That's been our discussion.
Right.
Perhaps maybe that could come into play with that space. And I don't know what bumps it from just storage to maintenance. I feel like the big thing is always sprinkled. It has to be sprinkled. But more money. But one of the, and so I know we're talking about that, but we kind of earmarked about $1 million for that hangar building. And we had about 750,000 from FAA, as Amy's mentioned. With the intent of whatever was over that number was going to come from the city. Hopefully less than that, less than $1 million, but whatever. With the infrastructure bill passing, we have $159,000 this year in additional entitlement money. And that is planned to be the next 4 years total too. So another about $800,000.
So to me, that seems like an opportunity then, that if we're going to improve our hangar space such that we have the capacity for maintenance, this is a decent window with which to do that.
Yes, that's kind of, yeah, so maybe we want to look at what would it cost to,
Yeah, is it going from $1
Equip
million to
or
2
have it
million,
prepared
right? Or is
maybe
it
for
$1 million to
something?
$1.2 million?
because it's not all coming out of the city's budget. That was the big restriction before, was anything over 50 was going to be city dollars.
I mean, it's all our money anyway, but it's nice for the government to give it back to us every once in a while.
But anyway, so yeah, I feel like when we've done a ton of work at the airport, what's nice is it was all free for the runway. So, I mean, I know, but my point is
I know.
we've done all this work in our coffer, our FAA
Yes.
grant coffers are still full, which is
Yes.
astounding, I guess. 'Cause
Yes.
it's usually not the way it goes. And then in addition to that, they're gonna give us another $800,000 for the next 5 years. So there's some money to be used and spent there. And the focus, I think, is the terminal building, or not terminal, I'm sorry, the hangar. More T hangars for more based aircraft and expansion of the terminal area. So that's gonna be the focus, I think, with the grant dollars.
And the fueling station.
And the fueling station,
is-
yeah, fueling, big, yeah,
is
the
another
direct.
priority for us, so. In the next few years.
And the other thing, I was just telling them, I've talked to, one of the other things in the infrastructure bill that's passed is $5 billion is going to terminal improvements. You have a great terminal. We don't know what the competition based is on it, but it's gonna be $1 billion a year. I think it's 90-10 match. We're gonna get it, and I'm gonna make sure everybody here gets it, and we're gonna brainstorm and see if there's an opportunity to potentially go after and make a case for utilizing that avenue revenue stream, or not revenue stream, but grant stream for the airport too. So we're gonna continue to keep our eyes open, try and maximize that.
Sure.
from it.
Sure.
Any other words of wisdom or guidance related to airport development? Thank you guys for the conversation on, I think that helps us out a lot, point us in the right direction.
I think the big thing I heard is we want to have a conversation with FAA and see about what it could possibly be to upgrade, not that we will, but what we could do to upgrade that to a mechanic and FAA would help participate. See, that's a big one, because that's right now.
That one, and then anybody that comes to us with an idea for airport, just bring each case individually back to the commission, have you consider it there. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Marcia.
Yes.